Jake McGraw from the William Winter Institute and Rethink Mississippi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I want to go back to this lawsuit a little bit more. This could have serious implications for the state. 21 school districts are in it right now. If a judge says, yes, you are owed this money, could more school districts sue the state again, or would that set precedent?
You know, I think largely it would just be the terms of the ruling. You know, I'm no lawyer, but I would imagine that they would try to put some sort of language in the decision saying that, you know, we can't have a bandwagon now. You know, that this is it. But I'm not sure. I can't really speak with any legal certainty about that. And I think that's why most observers think that the Musgrove lawsuit is unlikely to succeed ultimately. Even if it succeeds initially, it probably at some point in the appellate process will get resolved, because it would be an undue fiscal burden to the state. There's just not a real plausible way for the state to do what he's asking. Though it could make a really strong political point. And it could perhaps give the legislature more of a sense that someone's looking over their shoulder, that there may be a recourse if they continue to flaunt the MAEP statute. Then they're not going to continue to do that with impunity as they have thus far.
Looking at the MAEP statute, just late last year during the Joint Legislative Budget Committee hearings, Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves said that he was in favor of maybe moving away from MAEP and doing more of a piecemeal funding to education. Do you think that that's something that the state could succeed at if they were to just say, we want to spend this much money on special ed, this much money on general ed, this much money on pre-K? Is that something that the state should be looking at?
Possibly. I mean, MAEP is, you know, it funds instruction, it funds general administration, operations of schools. Even if we were to change that, you know, and try to take, I mean, I think the language they use is a targeted approach to funding education, there would still have to be an outlay for all of those things. I mean, it is the bulk of our education spending. There would still be a huge demand. We still have to pay teacher salaries. We still have to run our schools. And so I don't know that it would actually change that much. What could really change, and some of the proposals that have been floated, could have an effect on the distribution of money. And this is what MAEP really is designed to do. A lot of the educational litigation that I've mentioned before, you know, it deals with two issues. First is the equity of funding, whether poor districts are getting as much money as wealthy districts, and whether that's a violation of the Constitution. And also the question of adequacy, whether if we recognize that everybody has a right to an education, are we providing adequate resources to fulfill that right? Those have been the two legal fronts. MAEP was supposed to satisfy both of them and actually forestall the type of litigation that we're seeing with Musgrove right now and potentially with this initiative. So my worry is that if we were to scrap the formula, that it would be replaced by something that would decrease the overall level of funding, which would have an effect on the adequacy of the education we're providing. But I also think that it would harm high poverty districts more than low poverty districts. If the state pulls back its funding, a lot of that has to be made up on the local level, and we know that places with high property values can raise more money for education, and so I would be really worried about the creation of more inequity within our spending distribution.
State of the Union was last night as we're filming this, or I should say the State of the Union was earlier this week. the governor said that in his budget he proposed, I believe, $52 million in increase spending on education as compared to last year. Now that's not full funding of the Mississippi Adequate Education Program, but that it is an increase. Is a $52 million increase, $52 million increase, is that enough to get the job done? Or do we need the full funding of MAEP?
Well, I think the honest answer is that neither alone would be sufficient. I think that the governor's proposal would be more insufficient than full funding of MAEP. The question, and this is kind of broadening the topic of conversation, but there's been so much focus on education funding as the be-all, end-all of education policy or of even economic mobility that I think we have excluded from the debate some really critical factors that actually have more of an impact on student performance and school performance. Largely, it's just about the poverty rate. You know, that is the biggest and best predictor that we have for whether a school will succeed or fail, is what percentage of its student population lives in a low-income household. And while there is some research, and actually some recent research, that suggests that more funding in schools can help counteract the effects of poverty, you're not going to close the achievement gap between middle-class kids and low-income kids with funding alone, or certainly not with the levels of funding that we're talking about with MAEP or the governor's proposal. And so it's hard to say that either will get the job done. But what is clear is that there are a lot of things that schools can do, they should do, they're being expected to do, that if you listen to educators and principals, they say that they're really having a hard time getting by because they don't have the adequate funding that was promised to them by the legislature.
All right. With that, we're just going to leave it right there. Jake McGraw from the William Winter Institute and Rethink Mississippi, thank you so much.
Thank you.